You wake up, check your portfolio, green numbers everywhere. You're a genius. You've cracked the code. You understand the market like no one else. Then everything collapses. Your certainty becomes your destruction. Your confidence becomes your cage. This is the story Charlie Munger witnessed over and over throughout his 99 years. Brilliant minds destroyed not by ignorance, but by the illusion that they could control the uncontrollable. Think you're different? Think your planning, your analysis, your expertise gives you control? Munger would say, that's exactly when you're most vulnerable. Because the most dangerous moment in any game isn't when you don't know the rules. It's when you think you've mastered them. When you believe your success is entirely due to your skill, rather than a complex mix of skill, timing, and pure luck that you'll never fully understand. The market doesn't care about your theories. Life doesn't respect your plans. And the harder you grip, the more control slips through your fingers. This isn't pessimism, this is reality. And Munger understood that facing this reality head-on was the only way to build something that lasts. The human brain is hardwired to find patterns even where none exist. We see 3 coin flips come up heads, and suddenly we think we understand probability. We have a few successful investments and believe we've decoded the market. This isn't stupidity. This is survival programming gone wrong. For thousands of years, humans who could predict patterns lived longer. The person who noticed that certain clouds meant rain, that animal behavior predicted storms, that seasonal changes followed specific cues, they survived. The ones who didn't recognize patterns, they died. But modern life has weaponized this instinct against us. We apply pattern recognition to systems so complex that no human mind can truly comprehend them. The global economy, market psychology, geopolitical forces. We take a handful of data points and convince ourselves we see the bigger picture. Munger called this physics envy, but there's something even more dangerous: control envy. The desperate human need to believe that if we just work harder, study more, plan better, we can control our outcomes. Consider the gambler's fallacy in real life. You see a successful entrepreneur who dropped out of college and think, if I drop out, I'll be successful too. You ignore the millions who dropped out and failed. You see a stock that went up 300% in 6 months and think, if I buy similar stocks, I'll get similar returns. You ignore the hundreds that went down 80%. This selective attention isn't accidental, it's adaptive. In ancient environments, it was better to overestimate your control than to be paralyzed by uncertainty. But in modern complex systems, overconfidence kills. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of your success isn't due to your brilliance. Most of your failures aren't due to your mistakes. Both are largely due to forces beyond your control that you're barely aware of. The timing of your birth, your parents' economic situation, the school you attended, the economic climate when you started your career, the 1,000 random encounters that shaped your opportunities, none of this was under your control. Yet we build elaborate stories about why we succeeded and why others failed, as if we were the primary architects of our destiny. This illusion feels good. It gives us a sense of agency in a chaotic world. But it also sets us up for catastrophic mistakes when we bet everything on our ability to control outcomes that are largely random. The most dangerous version of this is what psychologists call fundamental attribution error. When you succeed, you attribute it to skill. When you fail, you blame circumstances. When others succeed, you attribute it to luck. When others fail, you blame their incompetence. This creates a toxic cycle. You become overconfident after wins because you think you caused them. You become demoralized after losses because you think you should have prevented them. Both reactions prevent you from learning the real lessons about what you can and cannot influence. January 2021. GameStop stock explodes from $17 to $483 in weeks. Reddit traders convince themselves they've beaten Wall Street at its own game. They have diamond hands. They're revolutionizing finance. They control the narrative. Then reality hits. The stock crashes back to $40. Billions in retail money evaporates. But here's what's truly terrifying. Most of the traders learned nothing. They blamed manipulation, corruption, anything except the brutal truth they never had control. They confused coordination with control. They mistook temporary momentum for permanent power. They believed their Reddit posts and memes could somehow override fundamental economic forces. Munger watched this unfold with the tired recognition of someone who'd seen this pattern hundreds of times. Different assets, different decades, same psychology. Humans convincing themselves that their small actions could control massive complex systems. But the most dangerous part wasn't the financial loss. It was the psychological damage. Because when you believe you can control the uncontrollable, every failure becomes personal. Every loss becomes evidence that you're not smart enough, not disciplined enough, not worthy enough. The truth is simpler and more liberating. Most of what happens to you isn't about you. Markets rise and fall based on forces you'll never understand. Careers succeed or fail based on timing you can't predict. Relationships work or don't, based on compatibility you can't manufacture. This doesn't mean your actions don't matter. It means understanding the difference between influence and control. You can influence outcomes. You cannot control them. But Charlie Munger didn't learn about the illusion of control from textbooks. He learned it from life destroying everything he thought he could protect. 1955. Munger is a successful young lawyer in Los Angeles. Married, father to 3 children, building wealth. He's doing everything right. Working hard, making smart decisions, planning for the future. He believes, like most successful people, that good decisions lead to good outcomes. Then his son Teddy gets diagnosed with leukemia. At age 9, Munger does everything possible. The best doctors, the most aggressive treatments. He spends every dollar he has and borrows against everything he owns. If willpower could cure cancer, if money could buy health, if a father's love could override biology, Teddy would have lived. Teddy dies anyway. And Munger's marriage dies with him. The stress, the grief, the financial strain, it destroys what he thought was solid. Divorce, bankruptcy, starting over at an age when he thought he had figured everything out. This wasn't a business lesson. This wasn't theoretical psychology. This was the universe teaching him that the most important things in life are completely beyond your control. You can be a good father and lose your child. You can work hard and go broke. You can make all the right decisions and still have everything fall apart. Meet Adam Neumann, WeWork CEO, charismatic visionary who convinced himself he could elevate the world's consciousness through office rentals. At its peak, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. Neumann believed he controlled the narrative. He controlled investor perception. He controlled the community-driven future of work. His confidence was infectious, intoxicating, absolute. Then the IPO filing revealed the truth. Massive losses, questionable governance, a business model that made no sense. Within weeks, the valuation collapsed to $8 billion. Neumann was forced out of the company he thought he controlled. What went wrong? Neumann confused his ability to raise money with his ability to build a sustainable business. He confused investor enthusiasm with economic reality. He believed his personality could override mathematical impossibilities. This is the CEO disease. The belief that leadership equals control. That vision can overcome market forces. That charisma can substitute for competence. Munger saw this everywhere in Silicon Valley. Smart people who confused fundraising with business building, who mistook growth for value, who believed their ability to inspire meant they could control outcomes. The cruel irony: the more successful you become, the more dangerous this illusion becomes. Success makes you think you caused it entirely, that you understand the formula, that you can repeat it at will. But every business exists within an ecosystem of competitors, regulators, economic cycles, technological changes, and consumer preferences that no single person can control. The CEO who believes otherwise isn't leading, they're gambling with other people's money. Here's what separates great CEOs from delusional ones. They understand the difference between leadership and lordship. Leadership is influence under uncertainty. Lordship is the illusion of control over certainty. Great leaders build anti-fragile systems, organizations that get stronger from stress rather than weaker from surprise. They hire people smarter than themselves. They build redundancy into operations. They prepare for scenarios they can't predict. Delusional leaders optimize for efficiency under the assumption they can predict what will happen next. They eliminate redundancy to maximize short-term profits. They centralize decision-making around their own judgment. They build fragile systems that work perfectly until they don't. The difference shows up in crises. When the unpredictable happens, anti-fragile companies adapt and thrive. Fragile companies, no matter how brilliantly optimized, collapse quickly. True leadership isn't about control. It's about adaptation. It's about building systems that can thrive regardless of what you can't predict or control. This is why Munger always admired businesses with moats, competitive advantages that didn't depend on perfect execution or brilliant leadership. Coca-Cola doesn't succeed because its CEO is a genius. It succeeds because it has a moat that protects it from most threats that could destroy other companies. The best CEOs understand this. They don't try to be the smartest person in every decision. They try to be the person who builds systems that make good decisions even when they're not around. March 2020. The world stops. Restaurants close. Airlines ground their fleets. Oil prices go negative. Unemployment skyrockets. Every business plan becomes worthless overnight. Every projection, every strategy, every carefully constructed forecast gets thrown out the window. The illusion of control dies in real time. But here's what Munger noticed. Some companies survived and thrived. Others died quickly. The difference wasn't who had better plans. It was who built for uncertainty. Amazon was already diversified across e-commerce, cloud services, logistics. Netflix was positioned for streaming. Zoom was ready for remote work. They didn't predict the pandemic. They built resilient systems that could adapt to unpredictable shocks. Meanwhile, companies that had optimized for efficiency, that had eliminated redundancy, that had built just in time everything, they collapsed immediately. They had optimized for control in a controllable world. Take the restaurant industry. Restaurants that had diversified revenue streams, delivery, catering, retail products survived. Those that had optimized everything around dine-in experiences went bankrupt within weeks. Take the retail industry. Stores that had invested in e-commerce before they needed it thrived. Those that had resisted digital transformation to maximize short-term profits from physical stores died almost overnight. Take the employment market. Workers who had developed multiple skills, who had built diverse networks, who had saved emergency funds. They adapted. Those who had specialized narrowly in industries that shut down suffered devastating losses. The pattern is clear. Systems that prepare for uncertainty outperform systems that optimize for certainty, even when the certain systems are more efficient in normal times. But the world isn't controllable. Black swan events happen regularly. Pandemics, wars, financial crashes, technological disruptions. They're not exceptions. They're features of complex systems. Munger understood this. That's why Berkshire always held massive cash reserves, not because they could predict when opportunities would come, but because they knew opportunities would come at unpredictable times. The companies that survived 2020 weren't the ones with perfect plans. They were the ones built for imperfect worlds, the ones that planned for their plans to fail. This is antifragility, building systems that get stronger from stress rather than weaker from surprise. It's the opposite of the control illusion. It's preparing for uncertainty rather than predicting specifics. Munger called this inversion thinking. Instead of asking, how do we succeed? Ask, how do we avoid failure? Instead of, what's the best case scenario? Ask, what's the worst case scenario? And how do we survive it? This isn't pessimism. This is anti-fragile design, building systems that benefit from volatility instead of being destroyed by it. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to control everything is the moment you gain real power. When you accept what you cannot influence, you can focus all your energy on what you actually can. This isn't passive resignation. This is strategic clarity. It's understanding the difference between responding and reacting, between influence and control. You cannot control market crashes, economic recessions, pandemic outbreaks, technological disruptions, other people's decisions, your competitors' strategies. You can influence your skills, your decisions, your relationships, your preparation, your response to unexpected events. The control illusion makes you weak because it makes you fight the wrong battles. You waste energy trying to control the stock market instead of controlling your investment strategy. You try to control your career trajectory instead of controlling your skill development. Munger's approach was different. He studied what he couldn't control to understand how to position himself. He didn't try to predict the future, he prepared for multiple futures. This is the mental model of resilience, building optionality instead of predictions, creating systems that work in various scenarios rather than betting everything on one scenario. When you surrender the illusion of control, you stop being a victim of circumstances beyond your influence. You become an adapter, someone who thrives in uncertainty rather than being destroyed by it. The ancient Stoics understood what modern psychology has rediscovered. Happiness and success come not from controlling outcomes, but from controlling responses. Epictetus, who influenced Munger deeply, taught a simple framework. Divide everything into what's up to you and what's not up to you. Focus completely on the first category. Accept completely the second category. What's up to you? Your effort, your preparation, your integrity, your learning, your response to setbacks. What's not up to you? Other people's opinions, market movements, economic cycles, your competitors' actions, the timing of opportunities. This isn't philosophy, it's practical psychology. When you focus on what you control, you reduce anxiety, increase effectiveness, and build genuine confidence based on your actual abilities rather than hoped-for outcomes. Munger applied this ruthlessly. He couldn't control whether Berkshire's stock price would go up or down in any given year, but he could control the quality of businesses they bought, the price they paid, the management teams they partnered with. He couldn't control whether the market would recognize value quickly, but he could control whether they were actually buying value and whether they could wait for recognition to come. The result? Decades of superior returns built not on predicting the future, but on positioning for uncertainty. This is the ultimate control. Controlling yourself in situations you can't control. Maintaining clarity when others lose perspective. Staying disciplined when others panic or get greedy. Here's Munger's darkest and most liberating lesson. You're not in control, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's better than fine. It's the foundation of wisdom. When you accept that most outcomes are beyond your direct control, you stop taking credit for luck and stop taking blame for bad timing. You become humble about success and resilient in failure. You start making better decisions because you're not betting everything on your ability to predict what can't be predicted. You start building better systems because you're designing for uncertainty rather than banking on certainty. Most importantly, you become free. Free from the exhausting burden of trying to control what you cannot control. Free from the anxiety that comes from thinking every outcome is a reflection of your worth. The companies that last centuries don't do so because their founders controlled everything. They do so because they built systems that could adapt to everything. The investors who build lasting wealth don't do so because they predicted every market movement. They do so because they positioned themselves to benefit from unpredictable movements. The people who live fulfilling lives don't do so because they controlled every circumstance. They do so because they responded well to uncontrolled circumstances. This is Charlie Munger's darkest lesson. The minute you think you control the game controls you. But the minute you accept that you don't control the game, you're free to play it well. The choice is yours. Will you exhaust yourself trying to control the uncontrollable? Or will you focus your power where it can actually make a difference? Control is an illusion, influence is a choice, and wisdom is knowing the difference.